Excellent. We are getting started here momentarily. If you are hopping on with us, let us know. You can start engaging with the video or commenting our way, and we will get the show started here in a couple more minutes. All right, well, let's get right into it. Happy Monday to everyone. Thank you so much for hopping on to our Monday broadcast with the mayor. I am Juliette Abdel, your chamber president and CEO. And if this is your very first time on our page, make sure that you not only like this page, but that you're following it so you can be alerted when we go live or post content. If you're a returning viewer, which I already see some comments from those viewers with us, thank you for coming back to us. Not only commenting, but also sharing this video out to your network so others are kept in the loop on everything that's going on. Now, we skipped last week because, as you guys know, Facebook and Instagram and the whole social media world were a little bit crazy. So we were not able to do the broadcast with some of those service interruptions, but we do still have some updates that we want to share with you. Of course, we always touch on things that are around COVID numbers, not only in the city, county, and statewide, but then we move into what is going on with our city council or city hall. Now, our mayor is here with us, and we like to take up any comments or questions. So make sure that as we are sharing with you any comments, if you think of a question or you have a thought, that you just drop that into the chat section. What we'll do is pull that up onto the screen. So, for example, we have Parker Brown that's on here with us. Parker is an early riser and giving us a nice good morning message. Thank you, Parker, for tuning in. Your photo and your name is displayed and that comment, and we like to give you that nice shout out. Now, at the very same time that we are streaming this here on our Facebook platform, we are also streaming it on our YouTube channel, Westminster Chamber of Commerce, where someone like Wayne is already watching and tuning in and giving a good morning message to both the mayor and myself. Now, we're on everything social media. If you are not already connected with us, you can find us on Instagram and Twitter at Westy Chamber, on LinkedIn, Westminster Chamber of Commerce. And for a quick reference, if you haven't gone ever to our website, which I know everyone that's on here has, it's westminsterchamber.biz for you. And you can always go there for additional information about the chamber programs, events, news, and resources. Now, Mayor, I know that we have you for a 30-minute window. You've got some various items for us to discuss, and I will try and keep up with you in the chat section, but let's get this started.
Thank you, everyone, and definitely missed you last week. And a lot has changed between last Monday and today. So this is going to be a pretty full briefing. Still want to make time for questions, but let's begin. Let's start with COVID. The Jeffco Board of Health voted last week to require masks in local government buildings. And that's already effective. And so that occurred on October 7th. I've included the link so you can look at it. That is going to impact Westminster operations that are on the Jeff Coast portion. I did have a conversation with Dr. Comstock and have an email back from her that recreation facilities are exempted from this order. So when you're working out, and our legal is double checking this, but as you work out, you would not be required to wear a mask, or if you were swimming at one of our rec centers, obviously that could pose a problem. So I also want to bring to everybody's attention, there is a second public health order that the Board of Health is meeting on today at noon. And this is going to be in regards to requiring weekly testing from municipal employees and county employees that prove that you do not have COVID. You can opt out of that weekly testing requirement by having a proof of vaccination. So that's something that they will be voting on today, and all indications are that will pass. Obviously, Westminster is in an interesting predicament because we are in both counties. And so how we consolidate that is going to be something I imagine that council will be talking about, and our city management team will be talking about in the very immediate future. Are there any questions on that? Because this is a big change.
No questions on that. That is a huge change. Thank you for sharing about the exemption for recreational facilities. I know that was always a question about being restricted when you're working out, or when you're trying to suck in air or not suck in air if you're underwater, right? And so glad that you shared that update. And of course, we'll be tuning in to see how that vote goes for those employees with the county or with local municipalities that sit on the Jeffco side.
And so I just want to real quick kind of back up and explain, I think, the rationale for this. So oftentimes, if you're going to a municipal or a county building, you're there because you're compelled to be there. So whether you're compelled for jury duty, or maybe you need to update your license or something, your plates, you don't really have a choice about going in. And so people were being put at higher exposure, and they didn't have the ability to make that choice. And so I think that was the thought process. And I actually got an email this week from a resident similarly who was angry. It was an elderly woman that had been called to jury duty. And when she got there, no one was wearing masks, and she felt a little uncomfortable at the exposure. So, that's a one-off. And obviously our court's on the Adams County side, but I do know that there's a concern for folks. So additionally, I think what they're really wanting to prevent is a sixth wave. And so I think most epidemiologists agree in their modeling that we're most likely going to go into a sixth wave, and trying to make sure that that peak is as I guess low, the smallest slope as possible. For that is really important. And so I think Jefferson County Public Health is wanting to get ahead of it. But even for someone like me who's been following the data, it felt like we've been going in the right direction. Unfortunately, Colorado's COVID hospitalizations are starting to trend back up. We're seeing some plateauing. So there is a news article that I've included from a couple of days ago in the Denver Post that'll go over that information. And again, that's statewide. Now, some folks might have been following Denver, as far as Denver was the first municipality to mandate, and not testing, but actual vaccinations of their employees. And so it looks like, according to city data, 98.6 of Denver's 10,869 full-time employees complied with the mandate. So there had been this fear that there would be a mass exodus of employees, but that just did not materialize. So the employee vaccination rate is higher than Denver's overall vaccination rate, which is just 76%, and higher than the state's vaccination rate, which is at 70%. The mandate took effect amid fears that it would worsen the shortage of police officers and the sheriff's deputies. But the sheriff's department, while it lagged behind the city's compliance level, that rate was still at 95%, and the police department's compliance rate was at 98%. There was a group of 7 police officers who had sought an exemption through the courts, but that the courts did reject that. And so I've included a link to the Colorado Sun article that details all of this that Juliet can pop up.
Of course.
Okay. And while we've seen COVID rates plateauing or in some cases going down for adults, we have seen that the rates continue to rise among school age kids in Colorado. So, you know, we have some good news on that. There's a lot of talk that Pfizer is going to be heard by the FDA. Possibly, I think it was like I could be saying the wrong day, either the 25th or 26th. So potentially before even Halloween, kids could be getting that first dose. And I think that's going to be a real game changer for us once we get that. I think there's a couple of links I've included here that Juliet can share with you so you guys can get an update on that. Additionally, if you're curious about statewide numbers, Tri-County health numbers, or Jeffco numbers, we always try to include the link so you can look at that directly. But I'm going to go over very quickly our numbers in these two counties. It was actually a pretty good looking week in some respects for Adams County. So the 7-day cumulative incidence number, right? This is how many people per 100,000 contracted COVID. We only were at 113.73. So on Monday of last week, it was at 143.66. Now, as far as Jeffco goes, we're going the opposite direction. And please remember, everyone, on this, if you're a frequent flyer and you're on this, I know I always remind you, but the dates that I'm giving you on Jeffco were posted last Monday about 4:00. So they only update once a week at 4:00 on Mondays. So I am giving you the stalest possible data for the Jeffco. So we're really looking at what was going on almost 2 weeks ago. So as of last Monday, when they posted this, it was at 155 per 100,000 for the 7-day cumulative. That was up from 138.9. I actually talked to Dr. Comstock, the head of Jeffco Public Health, and she let me know she really sees this more of a plateau than a bounce back up. At 4:00 today, we'll see, did it bounce back down or bounce back up again? The 7-day average test positivity did go up in Adams County. So that was at 7.72% of those who were tested for COVID came back as positive. The previous week, it was at 7.4. It also went up in Jeffco from 5.3% the previous week to 5.7 as of last Monday. Hospitalizations also went up. So in Adams County, there were 135 folks with COVID or presumed COVID that were hospitalized. And in the previous week, it was only 118. And in Jeffco, it went down, but really a negligible amount. It went from 53 last week to 51 folks who are hospitalized with COVID or presumed COVID. Now, the following data points only Adams County gives, but I think they're very relevant. The current available medical and ICU beds. Now, these are not just for folks with COVID. These are just the overall capacity of these. But the ICU beds in Adams County are alarmingly at 95.5% full. Arapahoe County was at 100% full. So there's only 4.5% capacity, and that is an increase from last week when it was at 90.9% full. Inpatient beds, so this includes your med surge and your lower level acuity beds. This also went up to 92.5% full. The previous week, it was 89.5% full. This is where it really starts impacting residents who maybe have to have other procedures done, people who have cardiac events, people who are in car accidents. And so we don't like seeing the ICUs at that 90% over and over and over again. That can't be the new normal. Here's some good news, though, again. The hospitalizations per 100,000 over 14 days. So this is the average per day over 14 days went down. so to 0.772%. And in Jeffco, it was 1.14%. So in both of these, it was down from the previous week. And then more good news on vaccination rates. In Adams County, we're at 78.4% of those eligible for a vaccine are vaccinated. And in Jeffco, it's really high. It's at 79.7% who of those who are eligible are vaccinated. When you add in the kids that aren't eligible, it's a little bit lower of a percentage than we need to get that, communal herd immunity. But we're really hopeful when kids are eligible for vaccinations, we're going to see a real change in the trends. And so I remain optimistic about that. That's all I have on COVID right now. Just want to see if there's any questions or concerns or thoughts on this.
So folks are still hopping on. I see Mayor Pro Tem Dave DeMont is giving us a nice good morning message to you, Mayor, and myself. I also see Brian Head. Brian, thank you for being on here. He's, of course, a past chairman of ours, and he's sharing a good morning message. He's also saying that we missed you at the Chamber of Words Gala, Mayor Sites. We did show our annual year in review, which we'll be posting at a later point today on our Facebook and, of course, other social media pages, and where you were featured as one of our key partners at the city. So just wanted to display that for you if you had any comment for Brian.
I do. I just want to say thank you always for hosting such wonderful events. And I apologize as prior to the broadcast starting, Juliet and I were talking about it being gala season. So I think most elected officials had a pretty deep book of conflicting events. And so I was very sorry to miss, but heard rave reviews from everyone that was in attendance. And I would be very remiss if I didn't mention that my predecessor received the Chairman's Award.
Yes.
So I really value and appreciate that partnership between the City of Westminster and the Westminster Chamber of Commerce.
Absolutely. Dave Carpenter had a question for us. Now, at first, we did start talking a little bit about Denver, and Denver being one of the municipalities here in Colorado that's mandated for its employees to vaccinate. There were a few different percentages that we shared. We did state that 98.6% of its current 10,869 full-time employees complied with the mandate, either by being vaccinated or receiving some sort of an exemption. Dave is asking if the percentages were before or after any employees have been terminated or have left.
I would look at the link to that article. I said I would have been prepared to answer that last Monday, but I've honestly kind of forgot the details on it. They did have a number that left, David, but I don't remember if that percentage was calculated from that point in time. So they didn't. Do you see what I'm saying? I think it's a really good question, but I don't want to spitball and give you the wrong information.
Absolutely.
So I would look at that article. But I do know that it was not the wave of departures that people had contemplated or were concerned about.
Mm-hmm. And Dave, that link is included for you and everyone else that is tuned in to the Colorado Sun article around the Denver vaccine mandate that has been in effect, and those percentages that we did share with you a little bit early on. Mayor, are you aware of any other municipalities that are enforcing something similar to Denver in Colorado, or is Denver kind of the main? Okay.
Denver is kind of the outlier on it, and I could be misspoken, but I have not heard of other municipalities. However, that Board of Health meeting that I talked about that will happen today at noon is going to be talking about something that is, I think, materially similar, which is that employees will either be tested once a week for COVID or can opt out through vaccination. And so that would be every single municipality that's within Jeffco. We'll go through that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you so much for that answer. We did also touch on a number of items for you all that are tuned in with us. And some of those, of course, were the numbers around COVID. Good morning to you, Christine. Thank you for hopping on to the broadcast with us and for coming out last week. For those of you that are interested in those statewide numbers that our mayor has referenced, those are, of course, available at the COVID-19 website for the state. That link's included. If you're interested in any of the numbers that we shared around Tri-County Health Department, that's also included included for you in the link that the mayor has provided. And finally, the Jeffco numbers, which we did share and reemphasize that these are a little bit delayed in being updated because we don't receive the announcements until after the broadcast. Those details are for you as well in that link. I don't see any additional questions that have come through, Mayor, around COVID or any inquiries on some of those additional numbers that we've shared. So if we want to just continue moving through, and if there's anything that comes up, we will also mention it in another break.
The next item, I just would be remiss if I wanted to kind of go over what's happened last week in the city. And I couldn't do that without acknowledging that our police chief, Tim Carlson, after 35 years of service to the city, did retire. And so that took effect immediately. And so he is no longer with the city. And Chief Norm Hobart continues to serve as acting police chief in his absence. And then the following day, city manager Don Tripp, after a decade of service to the city, did tender his resignation to city council. One of the last items that he did or actions that he took was to appoint city manager or Deputy City Manager Jody Andrews as our acting city manager. It will be on the agenda tonight for City Council to ratify that decision. So sure there might be some questions. I'm happy to field them. For the most part, I mean, former City Manager Tripp put out a statement, and I appreciate his decision and respect it. But I'm very thankful for the decade of service he gave to our community. And I think he did a great job implementing the strategic plan of the previous and existing city council and just wish him well in any future endeavors.
Great. I don't see any questions that have come through. We have shared those links for you in the comment section to the articles around the resignation, if I'm not mistaken. And so if you're interested in specifically seeing some of those quotes and the action that has been taken, please follow those links directly.
And then next, I wanted to just go over last week wasn't a huge meeting as far as the public portion of it. There was actually just 3 executive sessions. One was on an EDA at the downtown, and then 2 were on personnel matters. But there were quite a few info-only items in the agenda. And I wanted to highlight those because oftentimes those are really important pieces of information that maybe people haven't focused on or noticed because they weren't something council discussed. One was the Stanley Lake Security Assessment Update. And I've included a link if anybody wants to read that item. The next was an overview draft of the Federal Boulevard Multimodal Transportation Study. And I think that's a really important one to look at. We're doing that in partnership with Federal Heights and Adams County. And we hear a lot about Federal Boulevard and concerns about traffic and congestion and safety. So I would recommend folks take a peek at that. There was also a report on the final costs of the special recall election. And I want to highlight, those are only the hard costs. They do not include any of the costs of internal staff being diverted to that work. So it is a pretty high number, and it really only includes the hard external costs. And finally, there was an update on 73rd Avenue and Lowell Boulevard. There was a property update. The city owns property there. Earlier this year, there had been a vote that kind of changed the decade-long direction to turn that into a senior affordable housing. And we found out in that info-only item that unfortunately that deal is now permanently dead as the nonprofit we were working with has reallocated the funds that they were going to use to a different project. So are there any questions on last week? I want to slow down and make sure.
Yeah, that we hit everything because there was a lot of information. Do we know around that area nonprofit, since they had reallocated, was that just prioritization of other projects? Was it the timeline or the turnaround for us to approve this, or what was really the core reason behind them applying some of those dollars that they would have to this development elsewhere?
That council voted it down. Okay. I think that it was the council direction. And so I think that was they couldn't wait to see if we would recontemplate it, because there's county and federal dollars, and if you miss out on them, they're gone. And so I think they needed to go where there was a potential to go forward. But all of that information in that link, you can read through it. So tonight is a very full agenda. If anyone's already taken a peek at our packet, it's over 1,000 pages long. So one of the first points of business that we're going to take tonight is the resolution appointing Deputy City Manager Jody Andrews as acting city manager. And I think I'm hopeful and believe that acting city manager Andrews will have the full support of council. I really want to focus on the smoothest transition for our community and for our organization, and intend to do everything I can to positively and collaboratively lead the city through this time of change. On our public hearings, there is a really important public hearing. It's new business. It's item A on our agenda. And this is going to be the public hearing and first reading of adopting our comprehensive plan. So we have been working on this for 3 years, since 2018. We have had robust stakeholdering, community engagement, presentations from council, check-ins. And so this is a very long process, longer than a typical comprehensive plan update. And we've gone 8 years now since the last comprehensive plan update. We were first presented this comprehensive plan as a council, the final draft, like the rough draft, I guess, in April. We were presented on it in August. And tonight we're going to be voting on that. And so I'm hoping that we come to a decision. I know that it's been very typical. In fact, in 2013, when the comprehensive plan was approved, it was approved prior to an election. And the thought process behind that, which I think is wise, is there's a lot, again, 3 years of historical knowledge that went into this. And so that since we've been the council that have been part of this discussion, it makes sense for us to be the ones to vote on it. The next couple items are economic development agreements. One of which is for the Westminster Alley Market Hall, the Mark Shaker property. So that's going to be of note to folks who are watching the development at our downtown closely. Then there's a pretty big change in how we have our infrastructure fee that is on people's water bill right now. So typically we have used that fee, and only, instead of doing it per household unit, we've done it per meter. So meaning folks in multifamily haven't been assessed this fee, even though they use our roads and our concrete. So we're changing the name so there's more transparency to a roadway improvement fee, so people know what it's for. But then also charging even folks that live in multifamily this fee, since they do contribute to the impact on our roads. So that is something that will be voted on by council tonight. And it does help inform the budget, which we'll be voting on later tonight. So, it's a really, really big agenda tonight. And I recognize we've got 1 minute till we're out of time here. So I want to go kind of quickly. TAP fees are also on the budget tonight. So approving TAP fees. And adopting the water and sewer rates, which again were a 0% rate increase. And then finally the budget. After that, we're going to have a meeting as GID for Westminster. But those, there's not as many juicy details in there. So I know I went through that pretty quickly. Does anyone have questions on any of those items?
I do see a comment that came to us from Mayor Pro Tem DeMott about the comp plan, which is also something that is included. It is one of those that is very lengthy and important for everyone to consider. As the mayor has shared, the items that are on their radar are substantial. over 1,000 pages on their agenda, and the link to that agenda we quickly flashed for you at the start. Individual links have also been included to touch on the individual items that we highlighted for you, just so you're aware. But we do encourage you to hop on there and digest some of that information, at least some of the core ones that you feel are as pressing for you to be aware of or engaged in as possible.
Right. And appreciate the comment that the comp plan is important and needs to be carefully considered. I couldn't agree more, which is why we took 3 years. We were going to adopt it actually in 2020 and took an additional year to make sure we had enough stakeholdering, to make sure the Planning Commission had the opportunity to fully vet it, and that council had multiple times and multiple presentations to look at it. We've had this since April, and I would imagine everybody since that amount of time should have had the opportunity to really read through it and see if there's issues that they have. So I agree that the comprehensive plan is an important document, which is why, to me, it would be a tremendous disservice to hand it off to a group that hasn't had 3 years or 2 years in some cases, of institutional knowledge and experience with this plan.
Absolutely. Gloria provided us a comment on our YouTube channel. It was around kind of coming from a faith angle around vaccines and the inability for select groups to, of course, take them. I believe this is probably in reference to some of our discussion around the Denver vaccine mandate and then the Jeffco one that's being discussed today. Gloria, one of the things that we did touch on was that, of course, outside of the vaccines, the mandate part of it also includes that exemption or the ability for you to not have to take that due to a few reasons. Of course, religious exemptions being one of those. Medical or generally is another one that's out there. Mayor, was there anything else that you wanted to lay on that?
No, and I just want to say that's one of the most beautiful things about this country is religious freedom and respecting religious freedom. And so religious exemptions, as Juliet has just described, are honored through that. And then additionally, the Jefferson County Public Health Order does not require vaccines at all. It just requires testing.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Gloria, for that comment. And for all of you that are tuned in with us, we went over a little bit on time and sped up significantly toward the end. I know there were a number of other items that we were hoping to share your way that we just kind of could not fit into the broadcast. So we'll carry those over for you next Monday. But before I go, I want to give a soft plug, and I hope you don't mind, Mayor. Today at 4:00, we actually have our forums. So we have school board forums for Jefferson County and our Adams 12 district. So if you are have a parent expecting a child soon, or you have kids in any of those school districts, it's very important for you to be engaged in that process. At 4:00 is Jeffco's, and then at 5:00 is going to be Adams. Of course, we will take up questions kind of organically like this, but our text message line is open, and our email address, info@westminsterchamber.biz. Send in the questions ahead of time so you can make sure that we ask them of those candidates that are on there. Tomorrow, we will be back at a weird time for a broadcast, but we will show up at 12:00. Again, due to some technical issues from last week, we're carrying our ballot overview commentary to tomorrow at noon. So you can kind of get the business lens on some of those ballot questions that are coming up to us from our city council and, of course, from our city. So tune in tomorrow at 12:00 for that. And then our city council candidate forums are Wednesday and Saturday. So Wednesday is our meet and greet with our candidates, not only for city council seats, but, of course, for our mayoral seats that is up. So make sure that you either attend the one in person on Wednesday. We will be at City Hall, a small meet and greet, and then the forum formats. And then on Saturday, if you can't make it in person or are not comfortable or feeling unwell, of course, you can still tune in with us on Saturday morning and still be involved in that process. Mayor, thank you so much for being on here with us, continuing to give us updates not only around COVID, but around our community and transitions that are going on in City Hall, numbers that are changing constantly with COVID, and then some of the efforts that you and your other peers on the dais are taking to move our community forward. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Juliet. I appreciate it. And I appreciate this group tuning in every week to hear what's going on.
Absolutely. Have a great day.